Hello and welcome to my MomoCon 2024 panel. My panel entitled WEBTOON Survival Guide. This is my very first time doing a panel at MomoCon, so it was a really exciting experience getting to meet all the people interested in webtoons and webcomics at MomoCon. I really enjoyed putting this panel together, so I hope that you also enjoy viewing it. Now I do want to also note that I am wearing a cosplay on this day. I was doing a casual take on Katara from Last Airbender. So I'm definitely in a get-up, and it's not how I look on the daily, but I do think that it was a pretty cool concept that I put together. So yeah, sit back, enjoy, watch, listen, and whatnot, and I will see you at the end. Alright, so welcome everyone to WEBTOON Survival Guide. If you're in this panel, that means you're considering taking those first steps into the exciting world of webtoons and webcomics. Congrats. Good job. Oh, you guys don't sound very enthusiastic. There we go. Cool. Okay. So yes, this is going to be a breakdown of the different tips and tricks. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me in the back? Okay, this is not stretching, so I'm just gonna keep it right here. There we go. Okay, cool. So yes, this is a breakdown of the different tips and tricks from my experience of drawing and developing webcomics so far. And to the end of the panel, I'll have a nice little freebie for you all to kickstart what you guys are working on. All right, a little bit about me. I am a digital artist, content creator, storyteller. I have been drawing and working on visual illustrations for pretty much my whole life. And I've been doing a lot of like digital as well as like independent film making like a while ago, ever since college really. And so I've been taking my visual narrative and storytelling elements and putting them together to make comics. And in August of 2023, I premiered my current webcomic, webtoon, Space Ultima, and and trust me though, work on that webcomic started far before that. Now a quick disclaimer, I am going to be using webtoon as the term, but I pretty much use that as a generic terminology. Obviously you have more hosting platforms than just webtoon, and then also you have different formats, not just the vertical scrolling, but you also have, you know, webcomics that are on things like, you know, itch.io and things like that. So I hope that this is able to kind of generically cover all those different topics. All right, so we're gonna start first with knowing your story. So of course, if you have an idea, sometimes it's hard to pinpoint that outline of how you want to communicate that idea. So I'm gonna go over some important structures that I've used. I've taken inspiration from, you know, the screenwriting area, the book writing area, and used that to create the story outline that I have today. All right, so the first one being the 3-act structure. Now, any piece of media that you have consumed, whether it's a movie, a book, a TV show, comes from probably one of the most tried and true methods of storytelling, which is your act 1, 2, and 3. And this is a really important and helpful framework for understanding when you have that beginning, middle, and end of your story. We all, of course, know where the beginning starts, kind of that spark of the question, the task, the journey that your characters are going to, you know, embark on. But when you really harp on the first part, you want to also really make sure that you're paying special care and attention to the rest. This is a really helpful framework, but at the same time, you don't have to fixate on, you know, focusing on, do I have the inciting incident happening, the plot point happening, all of those things. It's good to have that as an outline, but as you are writing and scripting your story along the way, it's going to, you know, kind of unfold in various ways. So I think about the inciting incident. You know, this is kind of when your character is brought to a choice. Like, am I going to go forward on this adventure, or am I gonna kind of stay in my house and stay in my comfort zone? Which, if that's the case, then we're really not gonna have the rest of the story. So an inciting incident is pretty much a given when it comes down to that takeoff, kind of rocket takeoff of your story. And then you have things like the first plot point. That first thing is kind of like the hook. So it's really introducing your readers to, oh, this is the ride that I am getting on. I'm hooked in and I'm ready to go up the rest of those lumps and hills. Like I said before, it's not an exact science, but one thing that I did when I was writing and formulating my idea is I pretty much took notes and I wrote all of those things out. That way I was able to know what the beginning, middle, and end of my story was, but how I'm gonna get there is going to look a little different. But I just think that it's very important to know how your story ends, even if it's, you know, gosh, a 1,000+ episode webcomic, you're gonna know what that final page, final panel is gonna look like. And then we have something that I'm very used to and I've actually used a lot. So the 3-act structure is kind of like a generic umbrella. If you want to go even more in depth, these are the different elements within that called story beats. And it says here story beats are the shifts in the narrative. So when you have different events going on, you can actually recognize when that next kind of organic next step in your story is taking you. So for example, with the catalyst in Star Wars, Luke Skywalker, his journey and adventures begin with his mentorship with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, of course, he could talk to Obi-Wan and be like, man, this wizard stuff, mumbo jumbo, it's like not what I'm about. Once again, we wouldn't have a story or a multi-million-dollar franchise, but you know that that catalyst is that choice, that pinpoint of where things take off. You also have things like, you know, your fun and games. You know, those could be your beach episode, your sports festival, things like that, that we all can, you know, recognize in different anime. But that's also a point in the story where, you know, you're getting to know your characters' relationships with one another. You're getting to see those blossomings of maybe a romance unfold and things like that. Fun and games are also typically what you kind of see in like the trailers. So all the previews, what the, I guess, meat of the story is typically what you're going to see with like fun and games and things like that. So I would say that this is something you can honestly just Google. I don't have time, of course, to go into every single one of these things, but if you go online, there's a definition of what all of those different outline breakdowns are, and so you can try to adopt that into how you're writing your story. A lot of these are kind of taken from more visual motion media, like movies and television, but if you really think about it, writing for webcomics is kind of like writing a TV show. You know, you're going to have, at the end of almost every episode, a cliffhanger. You're going to have maybe the revealing of information of some kind. You know, if you're watching a TV show, they want to get you to that next episode, especially if it's a show that maybe you're binging. So when you are ending an episode, your important priority is getting that person to swipe or click on the next episode that comes after that one. So my process, like I mentioned before, I do like to use that kind of outline breakdown. My script writing and episode writing kind of changes. It's kind of funny. I wrote maybe like 10 episodes for my webcomic before I even started drawing it. But when you actually put forward the visual aspect of it, things kind of start to change and you kind of see new things start to unfold. So when that thing unfolds, it is totally fine to make revisions, to write something a little bit different, something that maybe works differently than you expected. So that's a wonderful thing about it. Now, of course, not all ways of creating a story is perfect. because the reality of my process looks a little bit more like this. I've got sticky notes on my wall. I use an app called Milanote that is like huge. The storage that's taken up by that is really, really big. So while I'm giving out these helpful tips and tricks, whatever process that you can adopt into that works best for you is going to be still very prosperous. And then a recommendation I would give, this YouTube channel called Studio Binder. Once again, it kind of focuses more on film writing, but this talks a lot about tropes, a lot about story elements, and that's a lot of what I've taken inspiration from as well. All right, so knowing your character is your North Star. Honestly, I feel like this is sometimes more important than the story, because if you know your story characters, kind of like you know a person, like the person who you're closest to, you can put them in any scenario and they're going to give different, diverse, and unique look and feel to what's going on. So I'm gonna go over some of those now. So some of the important things I think are your character's backstory, where they come from. That could be regionally, their ethnicity, their race, things like that. Who are they before the story or before the reader meets them? And also, what's their trauma? You know, there's some things that, you know, that happen that make the character that we see now for good or bad. I think about from my personal OC, and that is Sophie, who works in a convenience store. Her parents passed away when she was younger, so her grandmother takes care of her. Now that her grandmother is an older age, Sophie has kind of pushed aside her personal hopes and dreams to focus on caring for the person who cared for her. So that's something that already in that sentence packs in, you know, she works at a convenience store. Obviously she doesn't want to be doing that. She doesn't want to work in retail. I've worked in retail. I don't want to go back to that. So there are a lot of things that, you know, you can take even from your personal life, but things that happen to that character are going to fuel their desires and motivations. So if you think about, you know, what do they care about? What is pushing their actions? Those are important things. You know, she has a duty and a responsibility to supporting her family, but she also has goals and aspirations for herself. So when the opportunity arises for her to come and save, you know, the universe, be a key player in this massive adventure, she's kind of torn, because she's like, on one hand, I would love to be doing more with my life. On the other hand, you know, at what cost? And so, of course, in the narrative of my webcomic, we talk more about that. But yes, those are some important things. And then also realizing that your opposing motivations can be very good plot, especially when you are writing people who are maybe on the same team. For example, you know, Sophie, she is hoping to prove herself to herself in this journey, while, you know, the other, her opposite, is also thinking that, you know, she's gonna get in the way of a possibly massive mission that they're trying to complete. And then this is another thing that, once again, I would probably recommend having it written down on a sticky note, just having those kind of like visual things up to know and kind of remind yourself, you know, who do they start at the beginning of your adventure and who do they become, who do they change into? Because if you are, you know, writing a story, there's something that's changing in that person, and you get to kind of see that revelation over the course of the story, and that's the important part. All right, so the next part on saving time while drawing, it is important to know that drawing for comics is much different than drawing for illustration or artwork. Comics are about quickness and cutting corners just enough to where it doesn't look sloppy. While this is not a tutorial on drawing necessarily, this is going to be some resources that I've discovered that have honestly made my life a lot easier when I've been creating on, you know, a weekly, or trying to create on a weekly basis. This is maybe a little bit more Clip Studio Paint related. Who uses Clip Studio Paint if you're an artist who draw? Okay, pretty much most people. I want to say that Clip Studio Paint has been promoted by most of the webcomic hosting platforms as, like, I mean, they include tools within that app that make it easier to export to these platforms. So vector layers, I would say that's something that you might be able to find outside of just Clip Studio Paint, but it's been very helpful for me. It's something that with vectors, those are individual shapes that when you draw them, you can actually manipulate the whole shape itself. If you need to like maybe up the line width or maybe, you know, rearrange them, rotate the lines, you don't have to worry about kind of what you see in that very far right image. You don't have to worry about a pixelation. So something that helps you with clarity, that way you can manipulate those as much as you want. And if there's a line or a figure, you can copy it and then paste it into a different panel, which once again helps with quickness, especially if it's maybe a same pose, like maybe they're standing with their back turned or something like that. So those are some helpful things that I found. And then also, if you use like a vector eraser, then all you have to do is literally slice through the line and that entire line erases. So once again, these are just some different tips and tricks that really helped me. And I know that Clip Studio, their YouTube channel, has become a really good resource for using that. Also backgrounds. So personally, I'm not a landscape artist. And if somebody really wants a unique, artful landscape and background for their panel, totally fine. Honestly, more power to you. For me, I have more background in like characters and like drawing figures and people. But I would say that 90% of webcomics, they use backgrounds pretty much. And there are ways that you can kind of manipulate the backgrounds to make them more unique. I laid out 3 programs that will over time become your best friend if you are trying to use backgrounds for the creation of your different webcomics. So Abler is actually something that a website called Acon 3D. That is an app promoted by them. That honestly is the only app that you need. You can render different lightings, you can manipulate all the individual pieces of the backgrounds. You can pretty much do so much with it. SketchUp Viewer Desktop, that is pretty standard. Like all you can do is open the 3D file. That's all you can do. But once again, you can move it around, you can turn it, and be able to see it from different angles and then export the visuals that way. I do also want to recommend Blender. So Blender is kind of an intimidating one. It's not for beginners. I think for me, I really honed in on how to navigate the app in order to move around it. But there are websites that have like elements that you can combine using Blender in order to make really unique backgrounds. I think that's the biggest, in terms of online discourse, I think the biggest criticism of 3D backgrounds is kind of like that samesies type thing. Like you'll probably see the same backgrounds in every romance, and you know, that is what it is. It took me a really long time to actually find sci-fi backgrounds because my webcomic is a science fiction based story. But I think with me, if there is exactly a visual that I have in my mind that I want to put on the page, I will pretty much make it from scratch. I'll look for it online, but I don't want to spend too much time scouring the internet for it when, you know, if you are an artist in this room, you can create these things and you can make beautiful art. So I would say kind of a caveat to all of this is don't forget the talent that you have, because you can make really cool, awesome stuff that honestly is comparable to you know, the 3D stuff that you find online. Reuse, renew, recycle. So this is probably one of the most time-consuming hobbies. I don't yet have the ability to monetize certain elements. So because of that, I've really worked hard to find cheap or free assets online. Clip Studio Asset Store, they have a whole library of things that you can find that are near free. But if you take a look, for example, at the far left, that is an example of a pose that didn't start out looking that way. Honestly, I think the pose was like just the arms crossed, but you know, with a little bit of manipulation within the app, all you have to do is move a few limbs and then you have a different pose. So really don't, I would honestly say don't try to buy these poses, because the poses themselves can be posed. So you can start from scratch on creating a very specific pose for your character. Also, the two other images, those are examples of me using the same 3D background to make multiple areas. Most of the time when you're making these comics, there's a lot of dialogue, and the dialogue does not have to have an extremely detailed background. Honestly, you can put a background, maybe add a little bit Gaussian blur, and then your real focus is going to be the characters themselves. I think for, you know, after maybe 2 or 3 or 4 panels, you might want to reestablish where they are. That helps too. But then also, if you have an establishing shot of like the story changing locations, that's how you can then use a background to establish where they are and kind of go from there. So definitely don't really worry too much about that. I also say when it comes down to like lighting effects and shading effects, I do very minimum shading. It's only for what I call spotlight panels, where maybe there's a close-up or maybe there's an intense emotion on a character. That's when I would, you know, put a little bit more work and time into that. But honestly, sometimes I would say definitely don't spend more than an hour on panels. But, you know, that's just me personally. Okay, just a quick thing on a buffer. So who here has a webcomic already published, like already out online?
Does it count?
What'd you say?
Does it count if you have like some episodes drawn but you haven't released it?
Well, this is for you. This section's for you, but you raised your hand, right? Yeah. So I would say, you know, when you are working on it, you get so excited, you want to post it immediately. This slide is also for me. Definitely make sure that you have at least 3 to 5 episodes ready, because what's gonna happen is you're gonna post maybe 1 or 2 episodes, and then you're gonna have to keep up with it. So if I were to go back in time and do anything differently, I would have at least 5 to 10 episodes already completed, because what that does, it helps you create consistency with uploading them. So if you already have 10 episodes in the bag, maybe you can release them bi-weekly, or maybe you can release them weekly if you are already in a process of creating them. That also helps if, you know, you're out of town, or if, you know, you just really need to take a break. I would say if you already have started and you are finding difficulty in creating a buffer, nothing's wrong with just taking a pause and, you know, letting your fans know, hey, I'm gonna be not uploading until maybe next month, just to keep up with my upload schedule. So that's a really helpful thing. Congrats, you now have a job in marketing. So this is the part that there's kind of a lot of ambiguity in it. There's yet to be kind of a science when it comes down to actually navigating, promoting it, because unless this is something that's just for you and your friends, which is fine, yeah, you're gonna want some eyes on your story. But I would also say that the only person responsible for marketing your comic and getting the word out is gonna be you. You know, you can say, there's a lot of online conversation about, you know, for example, WEBTOON and the part that they play in promoting comics. I would say the best part about being on WEBTOON is that it is very popular for webtoons and webcomics. So you already have a recognizable website and app that your stuff is appearing on. And it's easy for people to know that, maybe versus you know, a website that you create. So there are some things that I have used so far that's helped me promote and get the engagement up. So of course, starting a Instagram or TikTok for your comic. That's really helpful to have people keep up with your uploads, letting people know ahead of time. Instagram in particular has a lot of helpful things like countdowns where people can get notifications when you have posted this, recording videos of your drawing process. And for me, I'm used to kind of, recording myself and being on camera, but some people might not be. That's okay too. Maybe something like a simple voiceover could suffice. You can maybe draw certain scenes and maybe give a description of what the story is, or even a description of your process. That's what I've kind of been doing with Twitch. I'll get on Twitch and record my process while also talking to viewers and readers about it, so that helps kind of get eyes on your story. Doing giveaways and challenges. A lot of people do like the draw in your own style thing where, oh, if you draw this and then first, second, third place winner gets this prize. I want to say one thing I'm about to try to do is one of those like repost type thing. And it feels kind of vain at first. It's like, okay, well, the art should speak for itself. It doesn't. It really doesn't speak for itself, because you are not the only person who is trying to do the thing that you want to do. You are also now, kind of competing with the entire internet too, which I wouldn't say is discouraging, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But just know that putting the word out there is crucial if you want some eyes on it. So in-person promotion, conventions, here I am in front of you guys talking about information that I have, but then also talking about the things that I'm working on. I've got some examples too, printables as well, so things like promotion cards, business cards, as well as stickers, investing some resources and money into some physical things also helps, because you can tell somebody, oh, follow me on this. And, if you do that, they're gonna, walk through a convention hall, go where they need to go, and they might not remember that. But having something physical is something that when they're going through their backpack or purse, then they'll be like, oh, here's that one person who I spoke to. It's something physical that they can remember as well. Bookstores, so if you have like a bookstore or an art supply shop, those are really great places to talk with the owner, meet with them, and ask them, hey, can I have maybe a stack of these at the checkout counter, so that way if people see it, they're interested and they can pick it up. That's once again kind of like an in-person word of mouth. And then also online groups, online discords, or even in-person artist meetups. That way you can all support one another, and when it comes time to be able to network and promote each other's things, you already have people who you've built relationships with who are able to, full-heartedly say, yes, I really like that. Going now to the kind of quality over quantity part, sometimes I feel like we see these big webtoons and webcomics that have like thousands of fans, and you're kind of seeing them in the middle of their kind of career with working on these things, versus you who's just starting, you're getting in it kind of like from zero. I think that, having like 100 fans that you can put quality into and actually like be able to respond to their comments and things like that, it's something that I really find gratifying when, even though I know the story, I know it from beginning to end, all of these people reading it do not know that. So I get to kind of fangirl all over again with what they're saying in the comments, and seeing when, one of the gratifying thing is, there was, I want to say the first 5 episodes, and somebody put like part 1, part 2, like paragraphs. And I'm reading it as if, I'm like, did they see my scripts? Did they see my outline? How did they know exactly what's supposed to be happening? And also like resonating and understanding the story. So I think that that's probably the most gratifying part, as well as being able to recognize the usernames of those people in the comments when they are, saying, hey, that looks great, can't wait for the next episode, and things like that. All right, another key element of your survival guide is also paying attention to your mental health. So this is definitely something not to ignore. And I'm not going to sit here before you, of course, and pretend like I don't have my doubts, because I definitely do. But there are certain things that I always try to do that also actually benefit my webcomic process in return when I am creating it. So I would say that you can't get water from a dried up well, just like you can't, you know, create only to kind of be creating from nothing. I take the time to, you know, watch TV shows, to, you know, read books, things like that. And actually in return, that kind of inspires my creation process, because while I'm not like, you know, regurgitating the stories that I'm reading, I'm seeing, oh, I really like how they told this story trope, or I really like how they kind of subverted the expectations. I thought the character was gonna go one way, but then they go another. So those are really helpful things that, you know, you're going to kind of like consume this media, and then it's gonna come out through your own filter. So I really find that helpful. Playing video games, going to the park, all that other good stuff, you know, as they say, touch grass. So, although I'm allergic to grass, I like to surround myself with the grass. Done is better than perfect. I remember, well, just a moment ago, I was saying how webcomics are about quickness. They are not going to be extremely detailed. If you're looking on a panel or on a webcomic or webtoon, excuse me, then you're kind of spending maybe 5 seconds on that panel, which is not to say that you should not put enough care into the detail that as a whole, the person is going to read that and be like, I really like the art style, I really like the storytelling. So yeah, making your page as best as you can without obsessing over every single detail is helpful. And so I would say my final thoughts, if you've heard all of what I've talked about and thought, well, what's the point? I really hope that's not the impression that you get, because like I said, it is, you know, it is time consuming, but it's also a very rewarding thing. I am sharing kind of a part of myself with others in a way that I wasn't able to when I was just posting art online. Like, I remember I was, you know, drawing art, making fan art, posting it online. You know, I get a few likes, but nobody was like commenting, nobody was sharing their thoughts. And then once I thought, you know, I like storytelling, I really want to put those two aspects together, that's when I started feeling like there was an extra level of meaning behind what I was creating. And then also building a community. And I don't just mean building a community with, you know, your fans or your readers, but building another community with other webcomic artists. That honestly has been really cool, because I feel like I've never been able to kind of get into these different arenas and actually kind of have conversations with other people doing things like me. And so, you know, I'm over here talking with other webcomic creators and webcomic creators who have way more subscribers than me. There was one who I've been in conversations with, and I look at her subscriber count and I'm just like, you're talking to me? I'm like, oh my gosh, like and you're nerding over my stuff? That's wild. So yeah, just building a community and feeling like, you know, you're not alone in this thing that we all decided to do. And that it's really fun when you can, like, you know, build a universe. Personally, I really like, you know, that kind of whole like mega multiverse, you know, when you have, I'm gonna use this as an example, Marvel. Don't at me. That was my comfort content, and it still is. I watch a lot of the older movies in, was it phase 3 and before? But I like how you can create these worlds, this world building, and just like really have other people be a part of it. So that's kind of like my final thoughts on that, and why I would definitely say if somebody asked me, you know, why should I try to make webcomics, then that's definitely the thing. Thank you so much for watching or listening to my MomoCon 2024 panel. Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Then definitely hit the like button and then also subscribe because there's more videos and topics like that in my current videos and in my videos to come. I did do a Q&A in person at the end of that panel, but if you are interested or have any questions that have sprung up while I was doing the talk, then put those questions down below and I will definitely answer them. And of course, as I walk through the entire video, I did a lot of discussion and description about my very own webtoon called Space Ultima. So please do check that out. It is something that I'm very passionate about, and I hope that that passion shows through in my panel. So Space Ultima can be found on WEBTOON. It can also be found on the app Tatty Ink. Definitely check out those locations, and you can find the direct links in the description below. I also have links to all of my social media, so you can always be in touch with what I have going on. Thank you, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!